The other day I burped so loud that it almost burst my eardrums. It hurt my eardrums. It sounded like a motorcycle.
Wow. Really?
That's awesome. Did
So-
it shake the house? Did the walls reverberate a little bit?
I couldn't hear. But I did. It was so loud. It was like
That's
a
serious.
motorcycle without the muffler, those. Hello and welcome to the QUACKCAST. This is QUACKCAST number 478. I'm Ozone Ocean and with me is Pit, Tance and Baines. Hi guys.
Hello.
Hello.
Oh, there we are. So who is the fool in our group? Who is the fool?
Who isn't the fool in our group?
That's a good,
Exactly.
Exactly.
That's a good point. I think we take turns. Or we should, but we sort of all try and do it at the same time. So
We crowd.
yes.
Competing fools.
So this week we're talking about the concept of the fool. This is a trope that's very, very old and very revered, and it's a good thing to have a fool character because they can serve a lot of different purposes. Just don't make them the leader of your country, okay? It's not a good idea.
Unless they are the lucky ones. Like if they fall upwards all the time, maybe it's a good bet.
Well,
But they
normally...
never do.
Unfortunately, when the fool character falls upwards, it's usually because they're falling on top of you to get there. So that's
Out of my ass.
yes, that's a problem. So that's what we'll talk about. But first, I have to get into the feature. Quai featured a comic this week. It was Steve and Melvin. So Quai, tell us about Steve and Melvin.
Hello, this is QUACKCAST, and the feature I've selected for this week is Steve and Melvin by Dean Zeeks, and it is rated T for teen. Melvin is visiting his best friend Steve in an unannounced and rather loud fashion one morning. The good thing about Melvin and Steve is that they can joke around constantly and throw in little jests while not getting upset with each other. The two are about to board a horse-drawn carriage to meet a king. A rather animated king in his castle. Along the way, they meet very interesting characters in the village of Astana that will keep their lives interesting. The pages are filled with vibrant and dynamic colored pages. It is quite a sweet treat for your eyes. You are invited to meet the quirky king of Astana, so read Steve and Melvin by Dean Zeeks. Rated T.
And that was the featured comic, Steve and Melvin. Okay, so after that, Gumwallis has given us the theme to Cragwater, which was the comic I featured a couple of weeks ago. This is a comic by Tol Froyo, who also does the Discord. Great little comic. Anyway, so the music is a magical, bucolic fairy music, lush green idyllic meadows on high mountains overlooking sunlit valleys, washed in golden brilliance, walled by faint purple mountains that fade into the distant hazy sky. A brook glitters at the center as it bubbles and flows between the rocks and grass. This music evokes high places, greenery and sunlight. So take it away, Gumwallis, with Cragwater. And that was the theme. Gumwallace, thank you very much for the theme to Cragwater. And Tolfreo, thank you very much for being a great comic artist. Right. The Fool. The foolish fool. What are your favourite fools?
You fool. You crazy fool.
Give us a song, Baines.
My brother and I always used to... That's a line from... Remember that movie Sin City, based on the Frank Miller comic?
Oh, yeah.
So Brittany Murphy is in it. There's a scene where her boyfriend takes off for some reason to go do something, and she comes to the window and she goes, "You fool, crazy fool." It's like a hilarious line delivery that we would always.
I think I remember that too.
Mind. Yeah, it's very noticeable.
Now I'm just thinking of full
God rest
songs.
her soul.
Oh yeah, poor old Brittany. What is it? Baby, you're a fool for love. Baby, you're a fool. You know that one?
Vaguely.
That's the only full one I know. I'm sure there are many of them, but yeah, that's the only one I know.
Hey, everybody plays the fool.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
I keep on thinking of that. I know what song you're talking about, but I keep on imagining to the tune of "Everybody Wants to Rule the World."
Oh yeah.
Everybody wants to play the fool. That's how I keep thinking. That's not that song.
No, it's not.
That'd be a good mashup with Tears for Fears. I
So,
love that song.
Everybody plays the fool. It's Ivan Neville, I think, the Neville brothers or something.
Oh,
No
right.
exception to the rule. Man, I'm not going to sing, for God's sake. People are... And to all the people who have switched off, good choice.
Well, they won't know that now.
They'll never know. It's too late.
You ruined it, Baines. You ruined it. You fool.
Okay, to all the people who are still listening, I apologize.
Well, what are your favorite fools?
Well, my single favorite character in comics is a fool, and he plays Jughead is the foolish fool, the idiot, the one who goes against the grain. He's also the wise fool. He's like sort of all the nuances, I think, of what I think of as the various fool types. He's that guy, So I love that kind of character.
What do they say? Speaks truth to power.
Right.
What a fool does.
He can
I
say
would
what
say-
others can't.
For me, the one fool that I really like and I enjoy is Obelix from Asterix.
Yeah, he is a classic fool. I mean, people would say sidekick, but sidekicks aren't always fools. Sidekicks are all sorts of different things. But he is a fool. That is his classic role. Yeah.
And he's a fool, but he's not always an idiot, because sometimes he makes choices that throw a wrench in Asterix's plans and stuff because it doesn't suit his purpose. So I really like that. He's not exactly a very predictable fool. So not always.
I love him. I grew up loving those characters. My favorite fool is Fleshman from the Fleshman series, and he's the Scaramouche style of fool. So not the fool, not the friendly, nice fool, but he's a very nasty, mean, taking credit for everyone else's success, falling upwards. He's lucky, he's protected by karma and everything like that. But he is a braggadocio. That's the classic Scaramouche, Il Capitan from Commedia dell'arte, that kind of fool. That is a braggart and selfish and all this kind of stuff, but entertaining and lovable because of that for some reason. I don't know why, but he is someone who you root for and you support, and as a reader you like this character. So yeah, that's my favorite fool.
Is a fool usually like that though? I guess it's a variable kind of.
Yeah,
I think fool, and I think like Kramer from Seinfeld.
it's just another style of fool.
Character.
Like there are,
I guess so.
different.
I don't know that actual character, that person.
Yeah, it's like like I mentioned, the Commedia dell'arte, the Scaramouche. He's that classic, like braggadocio character, and Il Capitan. That's another version from that. That classic section. Like people would normally think of Harlequin as being the classic fool, but he's not. Harlequin is more clever. But yeah, so it's just a different style of fool. Like, so you're talking about Seinfeld. Well, Duckman would be almost that kind of fool. If you ever seen, Jason Alexander, as you enjoy from Seinfeld doing Duckman, and Duckman is a fool, but he is more, the sort of like semi-intelligent fool who's falling upwards, who's like, very lascivious. Right. He has all these bad traits about him, but he's still a fool. So yeah, there's different styles.
I think of it along with Obelix, the other fool that I really like, top still is Baldric from Blackadder.
Yeah.
I think he is stellar. He's the best.
Yeah, he's classic fool. Baldric, yeah, he is like an Elizabethan style, literally.
Not only because he relives in World War One, and there is also, well, is it Georgian period? I don't remember.
It's Georgian. I'm just saying he's, literally because they do show him as the he starts out being a fool in the Elizabethan era, but I think that's because he is an Elizabethan style fool, and for the other ones he's still in that style of fool, even though he's in all different eras. His first appearance is in the King Henry V version, I think, or whatever.
Yeah. Well, actually, the first version is not like the other three.
Yeah, that's what I mean. He's a different style of fool in there. Well, he isn't a fool at all in that one.
He is the clever one, actually. He's really the Blackadder in the outfit. It's later that it's crystallized.
Yeah.
That he's the fool and Blackadder is the devious, nasty, snaky one.
So he becomes the fool in the Elizabethan era, yeah, and the early one he's not. But yeah, that's a fantastic example. And I was thinking, the Rowan Atkinson connection. You have the famous Mr. Bean, who is another kind of a fool in that one, and that's a slightly different kind of fool. That's because Mr. Bean isn't a good person. He is just a self-serving person, but he is a fool that is lucky and falls upwards. So that's his character, and he's protected by fate. Basically, he can do whatever he wants. Like he can run into the middle of a highway with cars speeding everywhere, and he would navigate it perfectly. He's that kind of a fool, but he's
without even realizing that he's going in the middle of an avenue.
That's very true. Yeah, he's doing that, and he's sort of in his own reality. He's separated from everything else. Like he's not connected to objective reality, which is an interesting thing. And I think his character as well, he has a different purpose because he's a universal character in that culturally universal. So you don't have to speak English in order to like and appreciate his humor. It doesn't have to be translated. It is like
he doesn't really talk anyway. So.
No, he doesn't. But culturally, you don't have to. You don't have to be English in order to get what, the cultural humor. Like if you're from, I don't know, like sub-Saharan Africa, you'd still get that humor. It'd still be just as funny to you as if, you're British or whatever. It doesn't matter. It's universal. So that's an interesting style of fool as well. So yeah, it can be.
Okay. Oh, and staying with Blackadder, in the later version, we also have George. He's another kind of fool.
Yeah, the two Georges from
Yeah.
The
He's King George or Prince George. I don't remember. And then he also is the corporal. I think he is. Anyway, he's
a lieutenant. I think.
One of the.
Oh, go on. Sorry.
He's one of the soldiers in the trenches.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, he has the two incarnations there, and both very foolish.
Yeah.
Percy as well was...
Percy, yes, absolutely.
So, that's interesting. So you have... He's a slightly different style of fool. Because, so, Baldrick was, like, speaking, like, truth to power. He was that style of fool. Whereas the Percy George fool... He was a buffoon. So that was that style of fool. So he was more of a buffoon. So he is the person in power who is the idiot.
Mm-hmm.
Which is, a different thing. So he is a buffoon and idiot. So he doesn't really have any truth that he's going to speak to power. He is power lampooned. So that's what he's doing. He is a parody or a satire on a person of power for us to make fun of. Because I think, like, Prince George, he is, like, that is a parody of a real person who, at the time, they made fun of Prince George in those kind of ways too.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's interesting that happened. And, Blackadder is sort of just playing of that, that Prince George is meant to be an idiot. And King George is meant to be an idiot. King George II, I think, is meant to be a fool. Was he a fool? I don't...
Have no idea.
Wasn't really that bad. He was more of a self-serving, self-centered sort of figure. But like contemporary to his day, people thought he was a fool, or at least made fun of him, and he was lampooned in, cartoons and things like that. So that's interesting. So how many different kinds of fool can we come up with?
We already came up with 3 or 4, so...
Yeah, we have the bad fool, or at least the selfish one. We have the buffoon, and we have the wise fool. So that's 3 very distinct types.
The accidentally wise fool.
Yeah.
Exactly. Wise.
Like your Forrest Gump kind of.
Yes, the Forrest Gump, the innocent fool.
Yeah, innocent fool, yeah.
Yeah, like Kramer, you were saying. See, Kramer...
There's also like a standard plot is to have the fool character mistaken for a brilliant character of some kind.
Yes.
Bill Murray plays this kind of... The Man Who Knew Too Little. Have you guys ever heard of that movie or seen it?
I've heard of it, but I have not seen it. It's advertised on Amazon Prime, I think.
Oh, okay, yeah. He's a sort of middle-aged kind of like fool, I guess, really. I mean, he's like, he works at like Blockbuster Video or something like that. He's like 50 or whatever he was at the time. And, he's really kind of like an embarrassment to his kind of more classy, quote unquote, brother and everything. And he plays this, he's entered into this game where you pretend to be a secret agent, and he accidentally gets pulled into an actual intrigue spy plot and bumbles his way through the whole thing. It's like sort of classic, like, fool mistaken for the super capable.
Oh, yes.
The Inspector Gadget thing, I guess.
Yeah, because Inspector Gadget's whole role is that.
As another example.
What is?
Yeah, I was saying that you got the Inspector Gadget thing earlier than me.
Right.
Being There, the classic film by Peter Sellers. Right. Chauncey Gardner, that's his character, who becomes president of the United States because they think he's stupid, because he's a gardener, and his like moronic utterances people take as profound wisdom, like Buddhist style wisdom, and he becomes the president of the country, and people are all taken in by this simplistic genius, whereas in reality it's just the utterings of someone who's disconnected from reality. So that is an extreme version of that. That
or you might even
fool.
have, especially for comedy or satire, you might have a full cast of fools, like in Spaceballs, where everyone is an idiot. There is not a single one character that is actually intelligent in that movie.
That's
Not
interesting.
one.
Yeah. The whole, every character in Spaceballs, there is not one wise. Well, sort of even the Yoda character. What's he called?
Yogurt.
Yogurt. He's a dumbass as well. They're all dumbasses. Even the baddies are terrible fools. Yes, they're all assholes. That's an interesting thing, yeah. Spaceballs are fools. Pitt, is Pitt's microphone dead, or?
No.
Oh, that's
I'm
okay.
listening. I guess I don't have much to input at the moment. I'll speak up when I do. I think I'm just kind of running on low right now. Sorry.
That's all right. I just didn't want you to be talking and, no one hearing you. That would be, yeah, that's okay. It's like, in chapter 6 of Pinky TA, I make the characters a bit more foolish, just because that was a bit more fun, and I like the Fleshman kind of, selfish, braggadocio kind of fool who, succeeds despite bad choices, and I wanted to have Pinky as a meanie who, even though she's mean and all this kind of stuff, she still like succeeded anyway. I like that idea. So I went with that in Pinky TA, but I really don't do that foolish stuff very much myself. But Baines and I, we do a bottomless waitress, and our character Frances, she's the innocent fool, very much in that archetype. And yeah, we like that. I think Jane is a bit foolish, but she is, she's more an intelligent character. She knows what she's doing. She's just naive.
Yeah, she's a bit naive. She's more like a standard protagonist, almost kind of character, I would say, like a sort of middle of the road, little bit naive, but she'll figure it out. Kind of thing.
Exactly. Yeah, but Frances is basically a trope character. Really, she is that kind of. Her personality is the innocent fool, and you can use that in, like, Baines, you're the writer there. You've used her in that classic, comic relief kind of role, in that, she has those lines that are uttered totally innocent, but they would be cutting from another character, but from her, that she says them because she's an innocent.
Yeah, just a simple truth. She doesn't know any other way to be. So, and is kind of unaware of the chaos around her.
Exactly. Like, she almost gets beaten up by these very mean girls. But, yeah, she's saved. So she is that kind of thing. She is protected by luck.
That's right.
Because the other, and well, it's not really luck, but it's because the other characters, looking out for, their character, because
she's lucky to have friends. So again, there is an element of luck. So.
Right.
Yeah. So that there's that kind of aspect. Yeah, very much so. Yeah. I don't know, there's so there, like I mentioned before, like there is an idea that a fool would be a sidekick character, and I think that is a standard trope to have a foolish sidekick. That's an older trope, and there are a lot of famous foolish sidekicks like George. Is it George from Mice and Men? No, Lenny from Mice and Men.
Right.
He is an innocent fool, and he is the sidekick. Is it Lenny? I can't remember. But there's also they did the Looney Tunes version of that with that
That's right.
the big buff dog, I think it was. And they also had a gangster as well.
Okay, George. Yeah.
Exactly.
I knew the parody well before I knew the original of that.
Yes. Exactly. They did it so well. But yeah, so he's the dummy, and the other guy is like the wisecracking, smart talking, like the leader in that system.
Right.
But say we've got the Flintstones with Barney is like the fool, the dummy, and he's also a sidekick character, whereas Fred is the smart one, and that's based on the Honeymooners, of course, which was that old 1950s sitcom where I can't remember the characters, but the main character is this savage kind of intelligent kind of guy, and the dummy is the the sidekick, like, oh. So yeah, those that is a popular thing, but like I said, the sidekick that can be reversed, like we talked about with Maxwell Smart being the dummy, Inspector Gadget being the dummy, Penny being the smart one, and 99 being the smart one, that kind of thing. So that can be switched around. The Tick, which is one of my favorite cartoons, and it's a comic and also a live action thing. We have that as well. Arthur being the smart one, the Tick being a classic, innocent, lucky fool. So yeah, it can be used in all sorts of ways.
Yeah.
So
There is
go on.
There is one kind of fool that we haven't talked about. These all are well written fools that we have talked about. There is also the very irritating fool, the one that
Good point.
Why are you pointing at me when you say that?
you want to be the anti-karma to their karma and just get rid of them completely.
There's an example that comes to mind immediately. There's probably
a lot
like
of
a million
examples.
I think of
Jar Jar Binks.
remember the Disney version of The Hunchback of Notre Dame?
Oh,
Yeah.
yes.
And a lot of people cite those fucking gargoyles as like, if they weren't in there, it could have been a pretty decent movie, And that's the thing is they had this conflicting tone, That was a dark movie for a Disney movie, and suitably so. And then you have these like wisecracking gargoyles and stuff, and they're supposed to be the fool, and then there's a actual fool character in there, but more like the Harlequin character, because he's not foolish. But yeah, it's just when it's pushed too far, it becomes abrasive really quickly. Like you said Jar Jar Binks, and now we can go get mileage out of the annoying fool character. There's what's his name from the Judge Dredd movie?
Yeah.
The one that, yeah.
Schneider.
The one that,
yeah.
And it's like their scenes are the scenes where you roll your eyes and you just stoically wait for them to be over so that the plot can go on.
Because they usually aren't adding anything of essence either. I think that's a big part of it. A fool, they have
Steve
to be...
Urkel.
They have to be contributing something.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, that's duh. But like I think of all those examples, and they don't really contribute anything story-wise. It's just kind of like, here, we want something funny to happen to lighten this tone, or like, I don't know, just to have something in there. And it just falls flat. And you're like, well, I'm not here for this. I'm not here to watch this person or this thing do what you're having them do right now.
That's interesting.
Exactly.
So what makes a bad fool?
It makes, basically, it drags the story down, or it breaks up the story or the mood. Like, for example, the one thing, Frozen, take Frozen. I didn't like that movie at all. I don't really know why it became that much of a success. But anyway, I just couldn't get into it. The biggest thing that I had as an issue with it was that stupid snowman. That everyone loves for some reason. I don't know, he's supposed to be like the fool, the cutesy fool that catalyzes certain situations and stuff, but he completely ruins the mood. This is supposed to be a dark, basically gothic tale, more or less. And you have this bouncing piece of ice that cracks jokes that are completely out of context with any other context in the story. And it completely disrupts, like it throws you off. It throws you out of the story, basically. It's like, wait, why is this thing here? We were on our way to, to the big intimidating ice castle, and why am I watching a stand-up comedy
right
now?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Interesting. So what I'm getting is that comic relief characters, comic relief fools, can be bad because they tend to be afterthoughts, or they tend to take too much onto themselves of the story, and they can't handle it. They can't handle the weight.
I think a good rule of thumb might be that if you want some, a few moments of jokes or lightheartedness or something in your story, that's perfectly fine. But if your main characters or the characters you already have are able to do it on their own, or you can have things happen to them that make the storytelling more dynamic, do that. Don't relegate a certain character simply to being funny or just being the punchline, and that's it. We were talking about earlier characters that work, and one that has just come to mind that worked really well was I don't know if you guys are familiar with Undertale at all, that game that came out few years back, I think around 2016 or so, but it's really cool. It's kind of a subversion on the whole, you go into this video game and you kill monsters kind of thing. All the monsters have like backstories, and there's different ways that you can play the game, and the game remembers what you did. Like if you beat it and started over again or something, it remembers what you did. But anyway, there's these two characters in the game, these skeleton brothers, Sans and Papyrus. They're named after typing fonts. And they both come off as, these kind of goofy characters at first. Papyrus is like almost like the Skeletor type of like goofy, like, he's trying to do the big bad thing, but he just can't really do it. And then, he's got all this other characterization behind him. And then his brother Sans, who's another skeleton, he's just kind of like this squat guy, and he's always cracking jokes and stuff. And but as the story goes on and you get more interaction with that character, you see there's more to him. And if you play the run where you're killing monsters and stuff, like they call it like a genocide run if you go and try to kill all the monsters. Like if you play it so you don't kill any monsters, I don't think you ever fight him. But if you play it so you're killing all the monsters down there, Sans, this little wisecracking skeleton, becomes the hardest boss in the game, and he will fuck you up. And like, so he's got like this hidden kind of strength. Like he jokes and he wisecracks because he knows he has a hold of the situation. And so there's that deeper characterization where like it's fine to have these foolish characters because there's something more to them. And then as things go on, you want to know more about them, you learn more about them, and they become full characters. You know, if it would have just been like, oh, here's these stupid characters and they make these stupid puns all the time, that's all there is to them. Then, like, you know, then they become forgettable, or forgettable at the very least, and then annoying at the very most.
Yeah.
Another good example to further what you just said is in the Last Airbender, the animation, the series, Sokka is the fool. He is basically in the group of 5 kids, more or less. He's the one that cracks the jokes. He's usually the source of comic relief and stuff. And he actually, you want him to be this because you know that he's not just being an idiot. He's not an idiot, first of all. He's just the only one that cannot bend any element. He basically, he's not the sorcerer. He's the warrior. He actually has a very high level of regular fighting skills that he perfects as the story goes on. And his coping mechanism is to crack jokes and to be the fool for everyone else, to help them. So you know that when he does certain things, he just doesn't do it because the writer wanted to insert a joke, right? You see him having nuance and having concern for the other characters. And there are certain times, and this is very important in general, I think, where he does not crack a joke because the situation is just that serious.
Okay.
And that actually provides a measure for how serious or how dire the situation is. If Sokka doesn't joke, then things are very serious.
Right.
So yeah, there's that.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, so he doesn't always get into that kind of thing. Yeah, so you can like round out your story even better that way. So yeah, the character. I was thinking of a good fool now who are the fools in Star Wars Classic series? And then I realized, that's the droids. C-3PO and R2-D2. They're the fools, but they're not idiots like Jar Jar Binks. He's a fool because he's disconnected from what's going on. Like he's being very correct and, caring about protocol and manners and stuff like this, and being very fussy, even though there's also, like he's in the middle of a desert or something like this, or the middle of a firefight. So that makes him a fool because he's disconnected from, what's happening, which is an interesting take on it. And that works because he's not actively being an idiot and he's not stupid. He's a very intelligent character, but he just doesn't, fully grasp the reality of his situation, and he acts inappropriately, and that makes him a fool. So that's another kind of fool. That's interesting.
Yeah.
That would have worked way better if they did that in the prequels, rather than actually going for a Steve Urkel, which is what they got.
But Jar Jar Binks, I think there is an art to having a balance with your idiot characters. Because if you go off the edge with the idiocy, people are going to be annoyed, especially because it's not only that you constantly have someone being such an obtuse character and person that their contribution basically holds the plot, because everyone has to stop and address the idiocy and then continue.
Right.
It's also wearing down on suspension of disbelief.
Yeah.
Because in real life, such a person either would not continue being with the group, or something debilitating to kick him out of the group would happen to this person. Not necessarily die or anything, but they would, first of all, either they would lose interest, or they would have to be relegated to someone so as not to put a high level of risk to whatever it is the others are doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It'd be carrying something or whatever, or staying back and guarding things.
Yeah, something like that. And they wouldn't even do that right. So then they would, return to disorder or something. But the biggest thing is that you cannot buy the fact that, so-and-so intelligent guy and so-and-so efficient person that is very stoic and smooth and ninjas would go along with a bumbling idiot that constantly messes up everything.
Yeah, as you say, it takes you out of the story and it ruins suspension of disbelief, because why the hell would they have that idiot along? I thought of another interesting take on a fool. If anyone has seen Parks and Rec, it's Parks and Recreation. It's a comedy series. Amy Poehler. They have this character Jerry, who is the fool, and it's weird because it's a comedy where everybody is a bit foolish, and there's this guy Andy, Chris Pratt, Star-Lord, and Jurassic World. I think he was in that as well.
He was a little bit more filled out back then. He was kind of a fool in that show too.
Yeah, he was definitely a fool, but he was the lovable fool and the fool that falls up. Jerry, who was the fool everybody hates for some reason and loves to bully and to laugh at, and he's like, he has all these traits, like he's overweight and he's out of touch. He farts and does inappropriate things, and he's incredibly clumsy. And I think that with that character, they were making fun of the idea of the fool, because he would be incredibly obvious with his things. And what you're meant to do with that character is you're meant to feel sympathy for him as an audience member, that he is made fun of and bullied. And you're meant to, by the other characters treating him like a fool, what you're meant to do is actually think, oh, actually, all these other characters who I love, actually they become slightly less lovable because of the way they treat this character. So I think that's another very interesting way of treating the fool.
Right.
Yeah.
Using him to shed light on different character traits of your other characters.
Yeah, how they treat him is tells you a lot about them, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you don't see very often in a lot of things. So yeah, that's another version of what you can do with a fool. You can undermine your own characters, so in a way.
Make people hate your heroes.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, think of very much related to Parks and Rec would be The Office. At least I'm talking about the American Office. I haven't seen enough of the original one to comment on the characters and stuff. The scenes, it has a few fools kicking around in there too, but the American one, Michael Scott is a huge fool, and it like really wears on the people around him, but it's supposed to, you know, and that's all part of their interaction, you know. And it's funny how sometimes you root for him and then sometimes you really don't root for him, but that's supposed to be how it is, you know. Like you're not supposed to always root for him. Like you kind of want to see him eat dog shit sometimes. Like fuck off, dude. And
you want to see him punished for the way he's acting and everything.
Yeah. And I mean, and that's got a variety of fools as well. Like you have Michael Scott, who has power and is usually trying to do his best, trying to do what's best, but his decision making isn't good, you know. And then you have the Dwight Schrute character, who I love, and he doesn't have the power, but he's a fool because he's kind of like, he has that kind of nerdy delusion where like everything he does is the best, you know, and like he's the one who's being groomed for power, and you know, like one of my favorite scenes from him of his is like he talks about like, I'm a purple belt in karate or something like that, and then it pans over and there's like 9-year-olds in his class. He's beating up 9-year-olds and shit. Like, but he's very much a fool. And then he's kind of more of like the Starscream kind of fool, I think, which is another very valid sort of fool. The
second in command.
Yeah, like the evil sidekick. Like, you know, we have the good guy sidekicks who are fools. Then we have like the bad guy sidekicks who are fools. And they're so fun. I love those kinds of characters. And then you have Kevin, who's just like this stupid fool. Like, he's just kind of a big dumb kid, you know? And there are 3 very dynamic sorts of fools in that show. People could say what they want about it, you know? It's got its high points and low points, but I think the way it has those sort of dynamics is kind of cool.
Yeah.
Hearing, I'm sorry, go on.
I was just going to say, like, TV, Tance, you read to us the TV tropes thing originally, which defines fool in a certain way, but there's so that it's like a whole genre. Like, there's a whole spectrum of different fools, and it's interesting to sort of come to terms with that.
Now that I'm thinking, like hearing you describe the different fools, there is another kind of fool who is actually not a fool. The person that is in essence intelligent, and you can see that they're intelligent, but they believe they are a fool, and they act like. And I'm thinking there is this very old and very fun movie that I really like, and I always think of very fondly. It's called Vibes, and it stars Cyndi Lauper and Goldblum. So they play 2 psychics that have different psychic powers. Goldblum can touch something, and he can see whoever else touched it before him and what they were doing. Whereas Cyndi Lauper has the very standard psychic connection with a spirit that tells her stuff of the future or things that are happening elsewhere and so on. So he's I think a museum curator or something like that. He's very sophisticated, cultivated, educated, you know, you name it. And she is a high school dropout, basically, who she would be a barmaid wench if it were medieval times. She's very working class in all her behaviors, and her style is very kitschy, and she always she's looked down upon by everyone, every other character, as someone that is an idiot and below them. And then beneath them not only socially, but basically in every way. But and she believes it. She believes that the only thing that she has going for her is not even the psychicness. It's just that she has a nice body, and that's all. So she invests in very skimpy clothing and stuff in order to promote that out of everything else. But you can see as a viewer that she's actually an extremely intelligent person, among other things. And you feel for her because she is fulfilling a prophecy, in a sense, without realizing her actual potential. And that is, in my opinion, the B plot, or let's say the C plot in this particular movie, because they're trying to go find the lost Inca treasure, and they're using their psychic powers to do it. And the B plot is, of course, a romance between them. And the C plot, I think, is her realizing that she is a worthy individual, and she has value as a person. So yeah.
Okay.
Oh wow.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that is
good movie. I know of that movie, but I've never seen it.
Oh, highly recommend. It's a comedy, and I remember, and always I laugh because it has very, very, very good dialogue.
Okay, yeah, awesome.
And it's very clever in general.
Okay, vibes. Awesome, a classic Jeff Goldblum.
Gotta love Jeff Goldblum.
In Jurassic Park.
Yeah. He has a beautiful way of talking, that fellow. Well, I think we were yes. Yes.
The podcast finds a way.
So weird. Well, I think we're about at just over the hour moment. So thank you guys very much for being part of QUACKCAST 478 and being my fellow fools.
Thank you.
And
fools love company. That's not how that goes.
And none of us were evil fools, which is a relief.
Thankfully.
Yeah. None of us were of stable geniuses. So that's something.
Unless we're secretly.
Okay. Bye-bye, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.